people have the choice to make an unwise decision. I have been to a 54-year-old male who is having a heart attack. I can see it on the monitor I do, but he's refusing to go to hospital. His wife is screaming at me to take him to hospital. I can't. He has the capacity to make that decision. I will tell him that if he doesn't come, he will die. But if he's deciding, I don't want to go, there's nothing I can do. I have to leave them there. And we will come back once they go unconscious. We're not allowed to coerce anyone to go to hospital. So we're not allowed to say, think of your kids, think of your wife, or, what would your dad say, or whatever. We're technically not supposed to do that. Of course we do. We're only human, and no one wants to see someone stay at home and die. But in that particular case, he knew what his wife thought. His wife was there. His wife was screaming at us. She was crying. He didn't care. The job is the job, isn't it? You know, someone has to do it. And I also know that people say to me, oh, well, you knew what you were getting into. And I get that. I did. Those of us that work in it know that whilst you can anticipate some things, a textbook isn't going to teach you everything. A textbook is not going to tell you what the family of a 4-month-old baby is going to do when you tell them that they died overnight. There's no textbook that's going to teach you that. I was a bouncer for a few years. I hated it. I'm not a violent person, I'm not an aggressive person. It was awful. I've worked in insurance, office-based. Again, I can't work in an office. Worked in a brewery, brewing beers for a while. That was okay, but not for me. I've never wanted to do like doctoring at all. That does not interest me in any shape. But I think emergency medicine, it's exciting, it's different. For me, it was a childhood thing. Always wanted to do it, racing around in the yellow ambulances. I fell out of love with it, and then one of my relatives, unfortunately, was passing away, and I promised them that I would do it, and I did, yeah. I can only speak for in the UK, but in the UK we have kind of several grades of clinician that work on an ambulance. I started by working my way up, so you do a week-long course, and then another week-long course, and then a kind of 3-week course, and each time you're kind of topping up skills to become a paramedic. So in the UK, that's a protected title, so we're registered and regulated by a governing body. And for that you need a degree. So I went to university to get a bachelor's degree in paramedic science, and that's what allowed me to work and say that I'm a paramedic, basically.
Do you shadow someone when you start off?
When you go out as a paramedic, you are supposed to be shadowing. You're supposed to get hours with another paramedic, but the service is so stretched at the moment that doesn't happen. So essentially you will go out with another crewmate who will often be as vital as a paramedic, but a lower clinical grade. If anything went wrong with this patient, it's on my head. And we wouldn't have the mentoring we were supposed to have. I certainly didn't have the mentoring I was supposed to have. I work in a station that is understaffed, so immediately I got what we call a line, which is a regular shift pattern. So when you're working, I won't always know who I'm working with. I won't always have a crewmate. Sometimes I'll be on my own. We have a high level of sickness in this industry, so a lot of the times I'll be on my own and they'll try and find me a crewmate, or I'll spend the shift on my own. It depends, but I know when I'm working, but not who I'm working with. My first ever day, I think I spent most of the day wanting to shit myself. I was very worried that I would kill someone, that I wouldn't know what I was doing if I'd get into a situation. As it turns out, my first day was quite run-of-the-mill. Elderly people falling over, just people generally unwell. And I think it's important to point out that in the UK, our healthcare is obviously free, and that goes for ambulances as well. So the manner in which we're used is vastly different to most of the world. So we are treated like I don't know what you would call a GP, general practitioner, just a doctor you would go to if you had a sore throat or whatever. We're kind of treated like that. So we go to all sorts of jobs. And my first couple of months were those type of jobs. So I was lucky. I got settled into it. I had bad days, but I seem to have hit a really rough spot since qualifying and have spiraled since. In this country, there are two professions that I know of anyway that can legally kind of declare death, and that's a doctor and a paramedic. There are caveats to that, but the point is that we declare death, which means if the police find a body, or family are concerned for a body, if someone dies unexpectedly at even a care home, we have to go and do the paperwork, check the body, and all of that. And I was going to a lot of them in a row, and they're very emotionally taxing, especially if the family are there, because there are expectations that I'm going to turn up and I'm going to say, charging, bosh, put some electric through them, and they're going to stand up and walk off. A lot of the time they're not ready to hear that. And unfortunately, your father, brother, son, whoever has passed away, I want to save their son or their daughter, I do, but I can't. And that can be tough. That can be really tough. And you get a mixed bag of reactions from that. And I never judge a person based on that reaction. Some of them, they wail and scream, a scream you will never, ever forget. They get angry, aggressive. Some show no emotion because they don't understand what you're telling them. And I think after a few of them, I really started to get quite drained. When you think of paramedics and technicians, the two grades that tend to work on ambulances, you think you go to someone's house and they'll be knocking on death's door. You turn up, you give some magic medicine, you shake their hand, they live to see another day. Everyone thanks you. The reality is the opposite. More times than not, if they're really that ill, there's not a lot we can do. If they're already dead in cardiac arrest, the likelihood is that they're going to stay dead. That was a harsh expectation to grab. Another thing is you don't see kids as getting ill, or you don't expect them to get ill. That was not reality at all. And that was tough for me. That was a tough pill to swallow. Death is painted as quite nice in the media, that people lay down and they close their eyes and their arms are on their chest. Usually they're not dressed. 9 times out of 10 they're on the toilet. Their mouth will be open, their eyes will be open, staring at nothing. They'll look incredibly ill. They would have likely messed themselves. Births are always quite happy. They tend to get pushed out of my head. I think it's quite obvious talking that at the moment I've plateaued, but I've gone down and plateaued. So I've kind of I'm very lucky in my station. I'm surrounded by the people that do work there. They're very caring and very good colleagues, and they have noticed this recently. And they did an intervention. So I am about to go up, I reckon. I hope, fingers crossed. I've definitely had to have days off. I've definitely had to go home partway through a shift because I just can't. Emotionally, I can't continue. With some jobs, you can leave your work at the door when you walk in. Not with this job. Some people can really well. I struggle with that a lot. And there were some days where I'd do 2 or 3 jobs and I'd think, I don't think this is worth how I'm feeling. And yeah, there were several times. I actually once did draft an email to my course director to say that I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't send it, but I was kind of talked down, but I definitely wanted to. It's hard doing 3 to 5 days a week, every week, seeing people at their worst. In the UK, we're a jack of all trades. We're social workers. We have to. I've been to jobs where we were called purely because an elderly husband and wife were fighting because one has dementia, one doesn't, but one doesn't understand that the other has dementia and one doesn't know she has dementia. and it's causing friction, and actually we have to act as social workers in that situation. I've been to houses that I've had to stay on scene until social workers arrived, because these people have kids, and these kids are in such squalid conditions, and they're living in crap. And we have to see that a lot, and there's a lot of poverty. I'm from poverty, so I get it, I understand it, but it's hard, because we then are the bad guys because we're getting social services involved. I've had to change babies because the mum just hasn't changed the baby, and feed babies because the mum just hasn't fed the baby.
Are you trained for social work?
No, none at all. That's all picked up on the job. I remember going to a road traffic collision. 2 cars. One car had 2 parents in and 3 children. One car had a mother and daughter in. And it had transpired, I found out that, and at the time we alleged that the father had fallen asleep during a long journey and careered onto the other side of the road. The other car, the daughter and the mum were in it. The daughter was driving, the mum was the passenger. The mum got out of the vehicle, exclaimed that her chest hurt, and then dropped down dead. We worked on the mum for a long time, but unfortunately she passed away on scene. What sucked, because I don't like lying to people. If I came to you and you're having a heart attack, I'm not going to lie about it. I'm going to tell you what's happening so that you know what's happening. The daughter was in such a bad way. The doctor on scene was worried that if we were to stress her out, it would kill her. So we had to spend a long time getting her out the car and lying to her about her mum being dead. And that played with me for a long time. I don't like lying.
When do you get to make creative choices like that?
We're quite lucky in that sense. A paramedic is classed as a healthcare professional, which means we're autonomous. That means whilst we have guidelines, they are only guidelines. We're kind of only strictly mandated on kind of how much of a drug we can give. We are allowed to give a set amount of emergency drugs. We're mandated on that, but everything else, whilst there are guidelines, we are autonomous. So I could come to you, I could assess you, I could leave you at home. I don't have to have you seen by a doctor or anything like that. I can make that decision. As much as what I've spoke about today, I love the job. And I do genuinely get to help people. And I like to think that I'd make a difference. If breaking bad news, I'd like to think that I was doing it correctly. And I have, as cliche as it sounds, I have saved lives. I have taken someone in who was having a heart attack, and I've watched them reverse it, or not reverse it, but stop it in its tracks. The average career span for a paramedic these days is 5 years before they give it up. I'd like to think as a paramedic I can make it a lot further than that. I'd like to. I can't see myself doing anything else. As much as I can moan about it, it is a very fulfilling job, for sure.
Any advice if you're considering paramedic work?
Although everyone has to die, and you'll go to a lot of people dying, part of our job is to make people comfortable as they're dying, and take some solace in that. Take some solace that in their last moments you can make them comfortable. Try not to dwell on all of the bad.
If you could tell everybody in the world one thing, what would it be?
Life is so short, and if you are wanting to go and get that thing, get that thing. If you're wanting to get that job, get that job. If you're wanting to go on holiday, go on holiday, because life is so short, and one day in a flash it will be over.